So I'm well aware of what's going on with Kellen Moore and Dan Quinn. When your team's doing well, you're going to get phone calls from other teams to interview your coordinators, and that's exactly what's happening. So Dan Quinn has said no. He declined for the 2 week early option to interview because he's focused on what's going on right now. Kellen Moore, haven't heard a lot. I'm not sure if he's going to do anything as of this recording. From what I understand, he's not. But still, same thing. You don't know what's going to happen in the offseason because for all we know, Jacksonville could be in a situation where they hire someone and we're good, or like that's the thing. Like we do not know. But there's going to be more vacancies that open up at the end of the year probably, and I wanted to first go over like what places to keep an eye out on, number one. And number two, just talking about where we're at right now and the realistic possibility they could leave. And then finally, if they leave, what are the contingency plans? So that's what we're looking to talk about today. Now, before we get started, if you could do me a small favor, like the video. Doesn't take too long to do. Helps the video do better in YouTube's algorithm, and it's greatly appreciated. Subscribe if you're new. If you keep rolling around and you're like, hey, I like this guy, by all means subscribe. And the most important thing is hitting the notification bell. If you do that, you'll get notified when a YouTube video from my channel comes up into your feed so you don't miss out on it. So I highly recommend that. Now, to start things off, the current vacancies are Jacksonville, as we're well aware of, with Urban Meyer being canned. Then you have Las Vegas, with John Gruden getting canned for the things that he did. Again, not talking about those specifically, just we know that those are openings. Now, the next opening I think is going to be Chicago. I think Chicago will probably fire Matt Nagy, especially if they decide to fire their GM, whatever comes first. I do think that Matt Nagy is done in Chicago. He is just aside from that first year, he's just been garbage, to say the least. So I do think that Matt Nagy will, in fact, be fired. So Chicago is going to be another opening. Now, the ones that I think that could be the next possibilities are Minnesota, and I would say Denver. I think Minnesota more likely. I think Mike Zimmer's program is starting to get a bit stale. And they haven't really been doing much. They've been stuck in no man's land. And what I mean by that, it means that you're good enough to not be trash, but you're not good enough to be a playoff contender. You see what I mean? Like you're basically not bad enough to get good draft picks. You're not good enough to make the playoffs on a consistent basis. So, and we see what's going on. It's just basically they're stuck in a rut. Now, another team I'm looking to keep an eye out on would be Seattle. Depending on what happens with Russell Wilson, I think you could end up seeing a possible situation where Pete Carroll does get fired. Pete Carroll's program's getting stale. They haven't done Russell Wilson any favors, and without him, they've been pretty much garbage, to put it bluntly. So, I'm trying to pull up the list as well as possible options for teams because kind of comparing what they're looking at. Look, you're going to have a couple openings. This happens every year. But for Dallas, they aren't one of those teams that are in the looking for a new head coach. Because clearly they have a Coach of the Year candidate in Mike McCarthy. The question is, can they retain Kellen Moore and Dan Quinn? It all comes down to what they want to do. Dan Quinn, when he went to Atlanta, he talked about how when he went to Dallas after he got fired, he said that, him focusing on the defense basically got him re-energized into coaching. So, unless he wants to give it another run, I just don't see Dan Quinn leaving, especially if you had a head coaching gig, you get fired, and then after getting back into your defensive coordinator stuff, seeing how fun you're having, all that fun you're having, I just don't see him moving. Honest to God, I just don't believe that Dan Quinn, given how things are going, will get promoted again as of the moment. It could change. I could be wrong, but I just don't see how you go back to a job that you particularly love doing, which is focusing on defense, and you clearly, you could see it, he loves doing it, and then you want to go back to the thing that you kind of didn't really like doing. Because head coaching is more so you're being a manager amongst every single personnel department and stuff like that. When you're a coordinator, you focus in on what you want to focus in, and whether it be offense or defense or whatever the case may be. So for me, I think Dan Quinn is staying, and Jerry will cut him a check. There is no salary cap on head coaches, so I do believe that Jerry would not be shy in paying the guy however much he needs him to pay. Now, when it comes to Kellen, it's a different topic of conversation. The main reasoning why is that he is not been a head coach like Dan Quinn, and he's moved up steadily over time. Starting as a QB coach, then he becomes your offensive coordinator, and now in line to possibly become a head coach. Now, he didn't take the Boise State job, which I'm pretty sure he would have loved to do. And I think the theory to that, and this is just my personal thought, not saying it's true, is I think he's going to be your head coach someday. I think he will be the Cowboys head coach someday, as long as he doesn't go somewhere else. Then, of course, that can't be the case. Because with Kellen, the thing that I see is that he could see a situation where he wants to be a head coach someday. Maybe. I don't know. It comes down to how he feels about it. Dan Quinn, I think, will be more reserved to staying in a defensive coordinator position. Kind of like a arc like Wade Phillips. He did the head coaching gig for a bit, and he kind of got back to what he wanted to do, and that was defense. I think the same path is for Dan Quinn. For Kellen, I don't know. I think that if he is to interview for any of these positions, I don't think he'll get it. But, I don't know. I think Kellen is more likely to leave than Dan Quinn. I could be wrong. But I would prefer to keep Dan Quinn. Now, the pros and cons of each. For me, I don't see any reason why you should let Dan Quinn leave. He has done nothing to say, we need to get rid of this guy. Like, Mike Nolan last year. Dan Quinn has made your defense astronomically better. And the fact of the matter is that you can't afford to lose him. I don't care what you got to do. Keep this guy for as long as you can. If we end up going down the road with him, let's say 4 years, and he ends up going somewhere else, that's fine. But you got to keep him as he develops these young guys. That's my main concern. Then you look at Kellen. For Kellen, the pro is that you have the chemistry with your quarterback, which is extremely important. Now, it's not like he's getting fired. He's just moving on, and I think that that's different. I felt like if you were to fire him, I think there would be a different reaction, which of course Dallas wouldn't do that. But if he were to leave, a part of me the part of me that doesn't like Kellen Moore is the road situation. So at home, Kellen Moore is in his bag. He's doing all this crazy stuff that we have been wanting to see outside of Scott Linehan when he was here. Thank God he's gone. I still hate the man to this day. The problem is when he goes on the road, he goes into this shell. And we've seen this happen with Scott Linehan and Jason Garrett's oversight and stuff like that, where the offense goes into a shell and doesn't want to do anything special. And then that's just being honest. That's been the case in most instances. And that's something that's a problem. Now, in terms of replacements, I think if you're the Cowboys, the number one replacement in-house would be Ben McAdoo. And you might be laughing because he was the head coach of the Giants, but for me, the way I look at it is that you got a guy that has experience in the league, and he's been in-house for a while, so it's not like you're bringing this guy randomly. And when you look at how he did with the Giants in 2015 with Eli and stuff like that, it's something. Now, I'm not saying he's the full-on answer, but I think that's one of your options there. Another option could be Doug Nussmeier. We don't know what he can bring to the table, but those are two guys that I'd be looking at in-house for the Cowboys to promote. Outside of the realm of the Cowboys land, I don't know. I think the Cowboys would bring in, that's kind of how I looked at it. I feel like when you went into the season, and considering how things were going, I think that bringing Ben McAdoo as an assistant really is more so like, God forbid something happens, you have him in the wing. So I think that you might end up seeing Ben McAdoo become your offensive coordinator if things go awry. Now, I don't know how this would impact the creativity of the offense and stuff like that. I don't know. But I feel like that's going to be a discussion when we get later down the road if Kellen were to leave and we have a vacancy. Then we could talk about possible options because then the league moves around. But I would rather keep Dan Quinn than Kellen Moore. I'm not saying this to diss Kellen. I think Kellen's a fine coach when it comes to what he can draw up and stuff like that. My main concern is that the road things are what bothers me. But that's just simply that. Now, the list of coaches, I'm just looking at an article from, SB Nation. And they mention guys like Byron Leftwich, who I believe will end up becoming the coach of the Jags. I think that he is in line to do that. I know Doug Peterson is gonna get interviewed by the Jags, which would be interesting. Eric Bieniemy, I haven't seen anything there. Raheem Morris from the Rams. They mentioned Josh McDaniels. I doubt that. They have Kellen Moore on this list. Kevin O'Connell from the Rams, which I think is, a name to keep an eye out on. And Jim Caldwell. I think that you have, I don't know about him, but, there are a plethora of guys out there that can be hired. If you're Dallas, I think your goal is to keep both because then you have that consistency factor and you're building something here. But the main thing that people don't realize when you become a head coach, it comes down to the quarterback situation. It has nothing to do with the state of the team. A lot of people laugh at the fact that, guys like so-and-so gets this head coach job, in Cleveland or whatever. That's different. But I feel like most of the time when you get hired, you're going to a particular job because you really, really, really want to go coach that quarterback. Plain and simple, right? You look at instances such as this one. You have Trevor Lawrence, who's a fine young prospect, which we don't know how he's going to go. Because, again, Jacksonville doesn't have a lot of stuff around it. But they could end up getting the number 1 pick next year. They could trade that down for draft capital, or they take the best prospect available. And, they got something. So, you could be looking at guys that are like, hey, I want to develop this guy. I like what I see. Now, for gigs like the Raiders, I think that would be a different topic of conversation. The Chicago Bears would be, hey, you got a young quarterback. If you like him enough, you might want to go there. We talked about Minnesota. Minnesota, same kind of template as the Raiders. Seattle would very much depend on what Russell Wilson wants. If he wants to stay and he'll take a new head coach, then that's different. But if he wants to go, you might end up in a different situation, right? But the way I look at it, and then, you got a team like Denver, which Denver doesn't have a quarterback right now. So, that is what you're kind of looking at is if you just follow the quarterback situation. If the quarterback situation, if you can either draft a quarterback, you have the realistic possibility of getting a quarterback, or number 2, you just have a really young guy that you think you can develop, they'll probably take that job. But I just don't think that given these circumstances, our guys would go to leave. I just don't see it. I think Kellen, being as young as he is, and considering he's only been coaching for a little bit, to be considered a head coach is pretty quick. If he ends up becoming a head coach, that's going to be looked at as one of the craziest rise to where you're at stories. But overall, I just believe that Dallas will be fine. I think they'll be fine. I think that we should, if they interview, then we kind of have a radar watch of, okay, we got to see what's going on. But I think we'll be fine. But again, we should kind of hold this off to the off season, and then we'll revisit this. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you guys later. All right, guys? Thank you so much for reaching the end, and I'll catch you guys later. Bye-bye.